Welcome to Civitai.com, the home of the generative AI art community. If you enjoy this video, please consider hitting us with a like and subscribing, as it'll go a long way in helping us continue to bring you the highest quality AI community content. Please enjoy the video. Guys, welcome. Happy Friday. Welcome to a Civitai.com very special, what are we calling this? Like a guest creator educational roundtable. We are joined today by some very intelligent people from the Stevens Institute of Technology. We got Chris Adler, our Civitai Air Director, and in rare form, we got our COO and co-founder of Civitai, Max Field, which I know that when I announced that Max was going to be on the stream yesterday on stream, everyone in the chat said, Max on stream? No way. So it's amazing how shocked they get by that every time you hop on here. But real quick, guys, so that everyone kind of knows what we're doing and can kind of see where we're going to go today. Chris, I'll let you take it away. Let's go ahead and go around and just do some introductions right down the chain, and then we'll kind of kick off the conversation.
Me, Chris, or the other Chris?
you, Chris. So I'll let you kind of take it away from here, and then we'll go right down the block.
All right. So I just so Chris Manzione is in our air program currently, and he's also a professor at Stevens Tech, and he is also related to the Institute of AI Research out there. So I kind of bugged him to get together some colleagues from the Institute for AI Research to have this conversation today. So that's everybody you're seeing here. Been kind enough to join us. So thank you everyone in advance. And we're just here to talk about kind of the future of AI, specifically within an educational context, but also, these are all researchers who are interested in different areas of AI progress. So we can get into their research. We can talk about AI as it pertains to edge computing, being on mobile devices, or how we can use it in the classroom. Any of the above stuff.
Hey, I'm really sorry. When one person is talking, can everyone else mute just so, because there was an echo coming through someone's microphone there. Sorry about that.
No worries. I think I'll hand it to the other Chris to kick off introductions from each of our panelists today.
Great. So, my name is Chris Manzione. I'm associate professor in art and technology at Stevens, and I'm also in residence with Civitai right now, working on a really big project, and I've been totally just like heads down consumed into comfy land, and I've been really kind of captivated by it and enjoying it. And I'll let my other colleagues introduce themselves.
Sure, I can go. My name is Jonah King. I'm an assistant professor at Stevens Visual Art Technology of Interactive Digital Media. So at the moment, I've been pulling a lot of AI-generated objects, imagery, 3D things into virtual reality experiences. So that's like in my artistic hat, that's my interest. And then like all of us, we're adapting to using AI in the classroom and thinking through that.
Awesome. All right.
I'm Brendan Englot. I'm the director of Stevens Institute for Artificial Intelligence and a professor of mechanical engineering at Stevens. And my point of entry to AI was through robotics. So my area of expertise is robotics and autonomous vehicles. And I'm really immersed right now in research in the area of sim to real, using simulators, high fidelity and low fidelity simulators, to teach autonomous systems how to navigate safely and intelligently.
All right. I'm Zhao Zhuo. I'm currently a CS assistant professor at Stevens. I'm also a member of the institute led by Brandon with focus on AI. And my research focus is on how to make AI efficient in terms of long-term sustainability, especially focus on large language model and stable diffusion. And also, I'm interested in education, but not just like a university level. I'm got invited to several high school in New Jersey about cost-effective AI. Like how can we enable efficient AI inference, of giant model on laptop, Chromebook, this kind of thing. So I'm generally interested and looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah. Awesome. Max, go for it. Remind the people who you are who are not familiar with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I am Maxfield Holger. I am COO and co-founder of Civitai. I think I have my title on the website is like Chief Dude or something. I don't know. I talk to people for a living. That is my job. But I'm really happy to be here because I get to talk to actually interesting people, which is fantastic.
Awesome. Well, Chris, do you kind of wanna help kick this off and give some context here and kind of lead us in the conversation?
Yeah, I think what Zhao Zhou was touching on was kind of interesting, and maybe we can kind of lead that direction of you said you were invited to a high school to think about sort of what applications of AI they could use at that level. Maybe we can kind of start there in not higher education, but I don't know, is that lower education, whatever it is. Talk about what teachers are wanting to see in that area, and just curious to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. I can give more introduction about this. So basically, this is motivation. Like when I do a survey at class at Stevens, it's like because I feel like in current state is like there maybe we are weakened the requirement of a mathematical programming background in terms of generate AI. You can just talk in natural language, describe what you want to generate AI model, and they can do it for you. And I'm just raising the question in the classroom about undergraduate and graduate students. What do you think is the best time to start AI education? They say maybe high school. Like half of the students vote for high schools. So that's why they brought my interest. Maybe we should broaden the participation of like a generative education in high school. So I receive like email all the time. I got invited to like it's called research club at like Addison Magnet School, and I'm giving a generative AI talk. If the students are generally interesting in generative AI especially, and also they're interesting like intersection between generative AI and arts. And also, I noticed, for example, the major machine learning conference where I'm shooting for, like NeurIPS, ISML, for example, NeurIPS, they're publishing high school project track. Like high school students can submit papers to the top machine learning revenues, and with a special focus on art generation. So you can see, like iClear, this year's conference, they have a special track like AI for art. Like how can we like use AI to generate a better art, and this as a separate track is like equivalent to research paper. So I think that is very like sounds promising to me. So that's why as an educator I'm more focusing on like this kind of area. And the second thing I want to emphasize, I ask them, can you access to like GPU, for example, H100 or something? That's what you take to like run a generative AI model. This is like, oh, we have a computer lab, but it's primarily MacBook and Chromebook. Yeah. So you can see there's a gap here. Like I want to do generative AI. But like the school is offering, we call it. So that's why I have motivated to do like cost-effective AI, which like I want to make AI cost-effective, like make it at least inference on MacBook and Chromebook. That's it.
Wow.
I actually so what since you brought up like generative AI being taught at the high school level as going forward as kind of like the proper time for people to be learning about it, what would you say at that level do you think are the important parts of this that should be taught to high school students for them to actually start getting a footing in understanding and using these tools? Like, is there a specific tool, or do you think it should just be more broad scope at that level when it's being taught to them?
So a short answer is like I always talk to the students like, please describe what you want as detailed as possible in English, and talk to like generative AI model. So this is what I learned when I was playing with like I use ChatGPT, I use like a Stable Diffusion all the time. It's like you have to be very clear about your objective and what's your plan, and you ask them to do it. And this is the first thing. And the second thing is like they should like learn something from like what we call in context learning. For example, you give them some examples, demonstration as a context, and they can like learn from the context and do the follow-up things in a better way. So this is like two major thinking. Is like you have to carefully describe your task and clearly describe your task, and then also like you have to provide as much reference as possible. But the third part is that both of these things require long contact. Like it actually shares heavy burden to the like computers are like computing, like a memory regarding the inference. So that is like what I'm focusing on, long context inference compression. Yeah.
Do you guys think too that being exposed to these tools at a younger age in a school setting would, for young people, help maybe formulate and teach better critical thinking skills and the ability and like mold their ability to ask better questions? Do you feel like that's a byproduct of interacting with these tools?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Jonah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Brendan. You're good.
I was just going to say, I think there's an opportunity to really tie this in more closely to what everyone is learning in math in K-12 education. And it will make AI so much more intuitive. On one hand, like Xiaozhou is describing, language is a huge part of it now. But ultimately, we're turning that language into numbers so that AI can understand it. And I think, K-12 students are immersed in math. They're learning things that their math skills are probably sharper than those of the average adult because of how much they're learning on a weekly basis about math. And presenting AI essentially as function approximation to them and all the different ways that we pack really, really challenging inference and predictions problems into mathematical functions. I think it could be very intuitive to teach that to students, map it to how relevant it is to how AI and how AI works. Because I think one of the things you often hear high school students saying is, why does any of this matter? When am I going to use this? When am I going to use all these different trigonometry or calculus or other types of math that I have to learn in high school? But so much of that is utilized in AI. So I think there's a huge opportunity there to make math more exciting, more relevant, and also teach high school students how AI works, train them to become expert users of AI in the future.
That's interesting. So, I mean, I know there's been several studies done recently, or not recently, I guess, if you count recently in the last like 20 years, I suppose, of how over time we've essentially outsourced a lot of our ability to memorize to tools like Google, for instance. Like a lot of the human brain's kind of adapted around that. With the growth of a lot of these large language models and tools like ChatGPT being used earlier and earlier, because you can imagine that people as early as elementary school are using Google, right? They're already remapping those parts of their long-term memory. I'm curious to think like what it's going to be like when we're essentially remapping a lot of like our actual ability to question, answer, critically think from, ages as early as like 7 or 8. And we're used to that kind of like as a norm. Or is that not as much of a concern? Or I guess what I really want to go back to with that is like, is that why when polled, people were thinking, hey, we don't want to pull this in until like high school at the earliest, as opposed to really introducing people in like elementary school?
Right. I mean, I feel like AI poses a bit of a paradigm shift for the entire model of education, because I certainly, like when I was in high school, which feels like a long time ago, you wrote essays and that quantified that you actually paid attention and that you read the material. And so what you see now is if you give a casual text response to a student who's pressed for time, the chance or the desire to edge towards using ChatGPT is high. And you can't assume that they're not going to, nor should they not. So the idea of quantifying through the old, like, write it out in a room with no material to check it against isn't really going to hold up very long. And I think the sooner we can introduce working with AI to students from an art perspective, maybe similarly to how, photography came in alongside painting and drawing, you have to let people engage with it, work with it, and then respond to the questions as they arise. So I feel like bringing even just one of the art disciplines into high schools as an AI module or something like that would start to present all sorts of interesting questions that then we would need to respond to and elaborate from going forward.
Can I ask just broadly, as teachers, with the advent of ChatGPT, I mean, did you immediately see sort of writing levels? I don't know if you do essays in your courses per se, but did you see the bar kind of jump up pretty quickly? Or are you still seeing responses that are submitted that you're just like, oh man, 4.0 could have blown this out of the water?
I don't know if up is the right direction. There's a very sort of flattening of things. I mean, you could tell it was being used, I think.
Yeah.
It was very like formulaic of what ChatGPT kind of pumps out.
Yeah.
And I think you can also tell when someone uses it as a starting point and then kind of, writes on top of that too. So there's maybe like some increase of like structure or like coherence across like, a response or paper. But I think there's also sort of a deadening or like a flattening of like emotion or like what you would like what a real response would be.
Is it like intellectual loudness, like what happened in the music industry almost? Like everything's just getting like the dynamic range is lost.
I don't know.
Maybe not.
I feel like ChatGPT is very good at just producing empty words, unless it's. So I feel like we almost need to teach like good prompt engineering, because otherwise you can just tell because there's an entire paragraph that said absolutely nothing, and that's usually the first indicator.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is kind of making me think about, I think, something we mentioned of touching on too is just like how does this get integrated into like curriculum? I think the state of things and how fast they're moving right now, it feels hard to match that with the speed of academic curriculum development sometimes, because that can take a long time to really get in place. And once it's in place, it kind of gets solidified for a 4-year time at the least. So I think like at least on the art side of things, there's stuff that we're trying to incorporate just into our curriculum as it is. And then there's where the AI is really changing and we're going to have to add that curriculum, sort of append that curriculum onto what we're already doing. And I think both of those, or the second one, it's still a little unknown what that is going to be.
So how do educational institutes though keep up with the rapid, like once this stuff gets put into curriculum and there is a generative AI something course being taught, whether it's in a high school or whether it's at a university level, how do these newly formed departments keep up as things rapidly evolve and are becoming better and better at such an extreme pace, when maybe a curriculum could be outdated in a matter of weeks or months? So yeah. Is that a concern?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak a little to the art side of things, and Brendan maybe other departments. But I mean, we have this problem a lot because our software and our tools are kind of always changing. Like maybe in like a math program like teaching algebra, that's not really changing in the same way all the time. So the general curriculum is more of like bigger concepts or the structure of sort of like the landscape of a creative tool set or like conceptual set. And there's a lot of space left for that to kind of change with things as it's changing. And I don't know, Brendan, if you want to speak on your side of.
Yeah. So I guess there's two ways you can do it. One way in which we're particularly agile and able to respond quickly is just integrating AI into existing courses to reflect how it's changing the way we approach those disciplines. Like freshman biology, for example, we now have students use AI because the impact it's having on scientific discovery, in biological research. Or in engineering design, to generate models that provide a physical realization of your design for a part or an assembly of components. So instructors from year to year now really are updating their curricula so that the existing courses capture how we're using AI. Then there's the question of generating new courses or new curricula or new degree programs altogether. It is a challenge. I would say we can do it more rapidly at the graduate level than we can at the undergraduate level, and we have generated some new certificate and degree programs to respond to the demand for AI education. At the undergraduate level, it moves a little more slowly just because everything is accredited, and we want to make sure, we're providing students everything that's needed to receive the appropriate training to be a practicing engineer or scientist. But nonetheless, new courses are getting introduced little by little. But it's a challenge. We're all kind of on the edge of our seat, talking every semester about how to respond to the demand for AI and adapt to all of the disruption.
It's almost like you need a fine-tuned bot, or like maybe an AI czar at the university that maybe it's not its own discipline at the moment because the roots are still sort of unstable and you need sort of that foundation to build up to current applications. But maybe you could focus on, just integrating it, like you said, into already existing courses in interesting ways. I think that sounds like an interesting idea to me.
Another important aspect is how it affects how students do their work. We have formed committees that discuss that, and how AI should be promoted, how the regulation of its use at our university. I think the one thing that was abundantly clear is we just need to be extremely careful about how we enforce the allowal or disallowal of the use of AI. And so we're very careful to avoid accusing a student of using AI if we've asked them not to. These days, the programs that detect whether something was generated by AI are not reliable enough really to use that to discipline students or hold them accountable to an AI policy. So if anything, we err on the side of adapting our curricula to allow the use of AI rather than trying to disallow it and then accuse someone of using it.
At this point, it almost seems like doing that would just be impossible with the way things are currently.
So I can give you some concrete example, because I'm teaching AI at Stevens. I'm currently in the front end. Everything is dynamic, changing every month. So I have to adjust everything. And one thing that really inspired me is one of the students says, I want to develop an AI system to do tennis tutoring from the videos. I play tennis and somebody can correct me whether I'm in a good gesture or something. And he says, I cannot find my teammate. Nobody wants to do my project. So I use ChatGPT as my teammate. I just ask them, I'm currently in this stage and I need your help. And actually, ChatGPT gives them very clear instruction. Maybe your feature is not correct. Maybe you should adjust something, and then they finish the project. It really inspires me a lot. It's they're kind of using them as a system. I'm using something to help me to finish this job, which I'm interested in. Previously, I don't have teammate. But right now, with the ChatGPT, I can finish a good project. And another thing I want to emphasize in terms of this education is in terms of AI, we see that they're going back to the tradition. For example, previously when we talk about something like nearest neighbor, decision tree, this kind of concept, students are not interested. But for the generative AI, you have to talk them in natural language, and which requires algorithmic thinking. People are going back to the foundation of computer science. This is something I want to emphasize. And the third part is everybody currently they're interested in AI, and they kind of want more out of it. But it turns out it's especially useful in some special case, for example, biology. If I search for some term in biology or something, there's 1,000 sub papers I have to read. I cannot finish in a week, but with the help of ChatGPT, I can do it most of the job in this short time. Yeah.
So how far off do you think we are? Because to actually get this stuff into schools, especially at a lower level, because as we know, high schools in general usually seem like they're strapped for funding, right, in particular areas. What does the compute power, or how efficient does this technology have to get for this stuff to actually be widespread across education in general and not just reserved for higher end schools or private schools and whatnot?
Yeah, so this is actually my research focus, how to make everything cost effective. And actually, I see a stream here. Major stream is you can see from large language model. Right now, with the latest release of Llama model, there's just 3 billion, 1 billion, and then giant 90 billion or even more. So we can see there's a two stream. One is we're pushing the generative AI model in our cell phone, in our laptop, to make it compact but powerful. Another thing is that we want to create some giant model like 400 billion or even more. So you can see that for lower land model like 3 billion or 1 billion, we can easily install it in our laptops and cell phones. So this is like the perfect situation for like lower ended education, which we target as resource limited institution. Like we don't have GPU or cloud service.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. Chris, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were going to try to move on to talk about like, I think we're kind of already there, but, you know, I suppose like edge computing devices are becoming more important as that sort of field is opening up. You know, do you see particular, I guess right now at especially the high school level where, you know, there may be, you know, not a lot of funding to create a new computer lab or something that could be powerful enough to run these things. Do you see like cloud computing, like remote services that provide inference, like, you know, Think or Run Diffusion or things like that as a useful tool? Or do you like, what sorts of tools would you like to see built now so that we could like teach us actively, especially at more entry levels? Does anyone want to go?
Maybe it's still me. I'm sorry. So I'm sorry. Like, so first thing is like, we think there is a like edge cloud collaboration paradigm. It's like if there's some like in a medium level task you can fix on your device, you fix on your device. But if it's a challenging task and you're not satisfied with your results in the edge device, you go with large language model, or like large model in the cloud backend. So this is like my strategy. So like it depends on your task, but like if you're focusing on like you're satisfied with this, let's go with low end. Yeah.
Nice.
I think as far as the creative tool set goes, I think having some kind of like cloud-based access to something like automatic 1111 or even, you know, some kind of like comfy workspace just to start to kind of build in like an understanding of those tools and how that functions. I mean, for us, you know, we're limited in space and like we don't have a classroom full of machines that we could be actively teaching students with in that way. So having like some kind of just like initial access to start to understand, you know, what the models do, what the parameters are, how they function, how you kind of interact and collaborate with them, or train your own model and pull a LoRa into it, all that stuff. Having some easy way, like even like semester to semester for a single classroom, just as a starting point would be really great. But yeah, the computing power is the issue. And then probably also like the file management or like file like transferring of stuff between where you're working and where you are.
I'm sure you guys are pushing for this already, but I mean, does Stevens or any other university you're aware of like really trying to put a lot of actual funding towards getting their own resources aimed specifically for this on campus for students to be able to use?
Brendan might know best.
So I guess as a starting point, we have a resource that's utilized by faculty primarily for research right now. It's called Jarvis, I guess inspired by the Marvel superhero movies. So Jarvis is a shared high-performance computing resource that has both CPU and GPU resources that can be shared by faculty and students that are working under their supervision. And I think it has a few NVIDIA H100s that are available and used by our faculty. Maybe the next frontier will be doing this for education. One of the big challenges, though, is that the needs and the technology are just changing so rapidly. Buying these assets too, they depreciate so quickly and become outdated and in need of replacement. So, I mean, I think we're able to utilize cloud resources to a much larger extent for educational purposes, and the needs are not as intensive that we need a high performance computing resource on our campus for education. But maybe Xiaozhuo, you can comment on that too. I guess your students are using generative AI to a larger degree probably than in any other classes happening on our campus. And are they using cloud resources primarily?
So currently, like for example, Google Colab, they offer like 16 gigabytes free GPU to like student education purposes. This is the primary like platform they will play it. But like generally, like I'm always like emphasize like don't use very large models unless it takes like a week to finish one trial of experiment. Like this is always like I'm always telling the students. And also I see some other opportunities. For example, if you don't train the model, a lot of like endpoint company, for example, like endpoint companies, like in the world, they're offering free API right now for the open source model, like Llama or something. So that is another resource. But if you're taking into consideration like, hey, I want to modify the model itself, that takes like intensive cloud resources. So like in education scenario, we don't encourage like you just modify some layers, parameters in the model because they're very like costly and ineffective. But like for prompt engineering, inference, computational thinking with generative AI assistant, you can do it with affordable device. Yeah.
So I have a question that I kind of want to aim at Jonah and Chris, because I think this would be a little bit more your guys' department. How do you see AI and generative AI being incorporated into art departments in school going forward? Because I feel like it can't really be ignored, right? With how widespread it is. So yeah, how do you guys see the future of this stuff? And this kind of ties back to specifically what we do at Civitai, because we are a generative art repository and website. But yeah, where do you see this going as far as art departments go?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's new. It's exciting. I think it's subjective right now because we're still figuring out what it does and what we can do with it artistically, in terms of a kind of holistic, teaching people to think through making a creative program. But I do believe that it's another medium. And I think that, while students would be taking classes in moving image or game design or drawing or photography, they should be taking classes in AI and AI generation. And I think that it becomes part of a mixed media program that informs their art practice as, creatives, whether they, whether if they decide to become painters, they can still employ AI models in the development of their work that way. So I think eventually it'll just sit alongside the other strands of education in the art program. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's already, it's seeping its way into, I think, all the other parts of our program already, in the tool sets that we're already using. So like all the Adobe tool sets, it's starting to be incorporated in part of that. I think it will be used across every one of our concentrations. We have moving image, we have design, game design, and interactive coding or creative coding. And I know it's being used across all of those, but I think what Jonah said too, as it is this new medium, I think that's kind of what I was saying previously, is it's going to be touching everything we're already doing and altering that to some point. But then there's going to be a whole new set of ways of thinking and ways of making the AI is sort of like allowing us to now explore. So I think that's something we're starting to talk about now. It's something I'm very interested in, and I think how that actually, where that falls is kind of unclear, just because it is moving so fast. But yeah, I think it's important for our students, like right now, to have some understanding of what this is, how it's developing, how they can use it, and sort of maybe try to kind of point to like where it's going. I think, I think it needs to be very flexible.
Yeah. And also that a lot of students are definitely already incorporating it into their work. You give an assignment on making a board game deck, and some students will make it from cardboard, and some students will generate the imagery and print it out. And, it's just, it has started showing up, and, for a while now. Which is exciting, and shifting also the way we teach. Like, I have this anecdote that, like, last semester I taught a workshop in motion capture, and we have like a great motion capture kit. But for whatever reason that day, the suit was too small, and then it needed a firmware update halfway through the workshop, and it was just like kind of a pain to get it going. And we got through it, and the students were very patient. But then on the train on the way home, I got an email, offering a kind of beta testing of a text to mocap model. So already by the end of that semester, there was an AI alternative to the thing that we just struggled through teaching. And I don't think that makes that redundant. I think it's important to learn all aspects of the tool and not replace them. But it was I got a bit of whiplash from that email. I was like, oh, okay, is this going to, what is it that we're teaching now that is going to be completely usurped or shifted by the end of the current student's education at Stevens? Like, that's a question that I think I'm always asking myself.
And that question feels like it kind of spreads across all things right now, right? For the people that are kind of looking at everything that we're doing and just AI in general, and really wondering, like, what does this replace and what does this simply integrate into and amplify?
Yeah, exactly.
Can I ask, what is that text to mocap model? Is it like you can speak in natural language and it outputs like somebody doing a cartwheel, like all the vector points of their limbs moving without anyone ever doing that?
That's the proposal. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's totally functional right now, but that's certainly what's being made. Yeah. Which is wild.
It had come up earlier, but the idea that the usage of a lot of these tools feels less like you're using something that's a traditional creation device and more something that you're actually like directly almost collabing with in some degree, like almost like a teammate in some way, whether that's from either a text model or, I mean, even definitely on like at least the static image side of things for sure. It definitely feels like that. One of the things I find fascinating is the ability to put in like no prompt whatsoever on some of these resources and just seeing what comes out in terms of like randomization and kind of, what would you call that? Machine ingenuity, I guess. The ability to actually like invent itself, which obviously, it's not truly doing that, but it's almost it's fascinating to see the outputs when you think about that. I guess the question I have out of that is in my mind, there's two like different ways that we think about this in the form of a media, right? Or a medium for creation. One is the actual usage of these tools to put out a human vision that you're essentially just using as like any other traditional creation tool. And the other one is almost like the machine is using you as a medium in terms of actually like being a distribution platform for what it itself is putting out. And you're maybe just doing base prompting or to get like just the absolute flattest line for it to start from to be able to iterate from. I've already said this one already. Question I have out of that anyway, sorry to reiterate again, is like, do you have any of your students or anybody that you've talked to that's kind of thinking about this in a similar way or is experimenting along those lines?
It sounds like you're kind of describing facilitating the technology to sort of exposit its own inner construction. Is that kind of what you?
Yeah, correct. Well, so we can bake it right now. Yeah, that'd be great. You can open up a stable diffusion model, put in a bunch of additional resources, and essentially prompt nothing, and just watch kind of like the randomized outputs of what it diffuses out of that. I'm not in any way claiming it like has any kind of creativity or will in the foreseeable future, but the usage of that is almost like a medium similar to just pouring a bucket of paint on canvas and just saying, what come what may.
I think that's a great idea. I don't know if our students are even maybe like have enough understanding of what all of this is to kind of get there yet. But yeah, that's a really kind of wild concept to think
it's almost like the role of like a practical researcher is what artists are stepping into, right? Where they can sort of, play the guitar on open G, and like what comes out depends on how it was tuned, and they can like get to the edge of like what is possible in that system and try and push it. I think a lot of the artists in the program are trying to operate in that way and really just like break things to figure out what's possible, where we should be going, what's new, and what's
Maxfield, it feels like maybe it's like closer to like jazz music or something, where it's like it's kind of this collaborative, like responsive, kind of just goes where it's going to go.
Yeah, very much so. Like I guess like the analogy I'm thinking of is basically if you just like set up a flute or something somewhere where there's just natural wind patterns, and you just recorded what was coming out of that.
Dude, what a beautiful artwork.
Yeah, or synths that are set up on noise or something. Somebody commented, sounds like a way to see the mind of God.
Depends who your God is, but yeah, possible.
Yeah.
This all, touches upon interesting questions about what goes into the model, right? How should it be trained? What should the scope be? And oftentimes as scientists, we're paying more attention to where there are gaps in the coverage of the model, and in many, many areas of science and engineering, those gaps are enormous. So I guess from my perspective, I'm always thinking about what should go into the next model, what can it focus on, rather than just having a model trained on the contents of imagery and text that's on the World Wide Web. What about the, human biological model, right, that we could potentially use to support future drug development, or the model that's going to allow autonomous systems to be able to navigate more effectively. In fact, there's a really exciting activity going on right now, like all around the world. University researchers are trying to collect data from different kinds of robots and put it all together into one enormous robot foundation model to see if that could be useful enough to help teach new robots, that have had no prior experience, how to go out and do things in the real world. But I think that's a really interesting area right now, is just all the different domains where we can have these specialized foundation models that maybe will help us see the mind of God in these other disciplines where there are enormous gaps right now.
Yeah, and there's an author who wrote a book recently, James Bridle, called Ways of Being, who talks about mapping the movement of the like flocks of birds and migration patterns as a way to detect weather systems to feed AI, generative AI. So I think it's a really interesting point that like we're not only having to think about the application of large language models and image-based AI, but also what else can we put in there? That's cool. Yeah.
Excited. Oh, sorry. Go on, Max.
No. Go for it. You're first.
No. I was going to say the exciting part is that it feels like we're still just at the very beginning of all this, even considering how fast it is currently moving and how difficult it seems to keep up with some days, is that this still feels like ground floor.
I think it is. I think this is just, even though we're on like GPT 4.0, this is like foundation model 1.0, right? What can we do by scraping all the data that we have on the web? But there's so many other places where there's important and relevant data. So yeah, this is the very beginning. And I'm sure we're going to see additional subsequent waves of transformation when we start building models for other applications.
Totally agree. So, Chris, where would you like to pull us next?
I think we could circle back. I mean, I do just have more like practical questions around AI in the classroom to kind of just get back to that. I feel like it's super interesting once you get to the college level. Like there have been foundational courses for a lot of different topics, and so you're sort of expected to be at a certain level. But like, what do we do with students who are just like way more advanced, who have been doing this stuff since they were in 7th grade? And then, you know what I mean? Like, do they like automatically go into like a research department or something? Like, are there opportunities for people who are already like sort of self-motivated? I guess the kernel that I'm getting at is like the self-motivated learner is now sort of boundless with all these new options online, and like the ability to train their own models, to interact, to have collaborators when they had none. right? Like we can have friends now. Whereas like maybe we were, kind of like off on our own or thought that we were the only one thinking about these things. Now we can like collaborate. So it's like where, what do you see as sort of like the potential for self-guiding learning in higher education using these systems?
I mean, I can just chime in that, like, yeah, I think it's really exciting, and partly because some of the obstacles as a art professor using technology is that, first of all, the students come in, as you said, with a real mixed experience.
Yeah.
And they've self-taught maybe for decades before. They're using tools that you've never touched, and you have to kind of work your head around what they're doing. But then also when you're trying to teach someone to have a creative practice, the actual figuring out the technology can be slow for some and fast for others. So the capacity to employ chatbots and other tools as guides in teaching the actual nuts and bolts of the technology is really promising, because right now professors either record their own tutorials or they find tutorials and then students follow them in their own time, and you come back and check in and it's kind of clumsy. So it would allow us to focus more on guiding a student's like creative voice, which is really the most useful, I think, role for a real life professor. And so if a student does come in really able with these tools, it's a real gift, because we can kind of go like, well, what do you actually want to do with them and why,
Sure. I think there's a lot of talk around how AI can sort of like close the educational gap in some ways, because it can sort of like fine tune, or be, you can tune a course exactly to where a student's at. Do you think there's any truth to that, or is there any kind of, example of a student, being able to be met where they're at? I don't know. Is that like a big positive? I've heard folks say it is.
I think it can be. I mean, I think of much of undergrad basically learning how to learn. And I think the, learning of like technical skills is important, but really building out a strong sort of muscle of like, how do I continue to like develop in this way, and then also implement those things into something. So I think that's like a lot of how at least I approach like with our undergrads, is like really building out, creative practice, but also giving them the tools so they can kind of continue to develop on their own afterwards. So I think if some kind of system makes that technical part a little easier, or kind of lets them develop their own practice in a nicer, simpler way, great.
Anybody else have any comments there? Or?
Well, I guess in teaching more quantitative subjects, I mean, I'm seeing an immediate impact in how it affects how students retrieve information, how they digest and package and present that information back to you. But there are still certain, I guess, rule-based subjects, where the limitations of GPT, are evident, and it doesn't necessarily have the rules of physics embedded in it, so you can't rely on it completely as a tutor, and it's not yet at a point where it can completely personalize your learning of a subject. I mean, it can certainly still be a helpful resource though for retrieving information. One interesting kind of experimental thing going on at our university is there is one professor in our AI Institute who has tried creating an actual custom trained AI tutor for his subject, where he's actually trying to train his own large language model on the transcripts of all of the questions that have been asked in his course over the course of several years of offering it, so that it can provide personalized tutoring, essentially an AI chatbot TA, for students who take his course. So it's still a work in progress, but that might help us create more personalized solutions tailored toward our specific courses in the future.
Chris, kind of coming up to the top of the hour here, is there anything that we've kind of left on the table that you would like to get out? And then also, before we kind of take this into wrap up, If there's anything that you folks would like the almost 1,000 people watching this right now to know specifically about Stevens Institute and about what you guys are doing with AI there.
Well, I'll happily take the opportunity just to mention a little bit about what we're doing in AI.
Please.
We're a tech-focused university, and I think it's represented by the fact that about 1/3 of our entire body of faculty are part of the AI Institute. It's very multidisciplinary, and the scope, of all the different disciplines AI is touching right now is incredibly broad. So, we're continually trying to develop exciting new programs to meet that need. But, examples of that include master's programs in data science, machine learning, applied artificial intelligence for students who want to be more users of it than developers of it. And so lots of exciting new stuff is happening that we think is meeting the ever-growing demand for education and research in AI. So hopefully you'll check us out and learn a little bit more about our programs.
Awesome. And where could they go if they would like to find out more about what you guys have to offer?
Stevens.edu. That we have a comprehensive website, but then also if you want to learn more about our AI Institute, that our acronym for that, Stevens Institute for Artificial Intelligence, is SIAI. So if you go to stevens.edu/SIAI, you'll see our AI Institute's website.
Awesome. For anyone interested, that link is in the chat for you all right now. Chris, Max, anything from you guys as we kind of wrap it up here?
Yeah. So it's really interesting to me to understand like how much the current like educational sphere is adapting to these tools and how they're like what they're having to do to be able to offer the best education possible to their students and their faculty for that matter. I guess the question I have is like how can companies like ours, like Civitai, do more to support you? Like, what would you like to be seeing from us to try and kind of get this more support for not only for faculty but also for students? And what does that look like?
I can speak for us in the art and tech program. I think I mentioned before, but like having access to some kind of like online resource. Like, Civitai has some image generation, even if it was like a short semester long sort of like educational or like free account for that period of time, or like a tool set for like all of our art students. That'd be awesome. A Civitai branded AI lab with 16, 17 last machines would be wonderful.
I get that first in line. I want that first, but yeah.
I can appreciate shooting the shot there. I can definitely appreciate that.
Really, yeah, just the access to tools and resources. Our students, they're enrolled. They're paying maybe some small lab fees, and I think like asking them for additional memberships or like other software seems hard sometimes. So even like things like Adobe, we kind of get licenses or like find ways to get educational copies. So something like that, so that they could really kind of dig in a meaningful way, and really start to kind of really understand sort of the structure of everything and how it's functioning, at least on the creative side of things.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Awesome. Chris, any last words?
I mean, if anybody has any cool research breakthroughs to share, feel free. But so curious to hear what sort of is the vanguard in the space right now. But or if we have any audience questions, take those.
Oh, a few pop up.
Yeah. So here's one. Is there a possibility of creating new interfaces with AI training? I feel like I spend so much time in Photoshop fixing things I wish AI could understand better.
I mean, I think some of the AI tools in Photoshop are getting really good. I think they're limited. I think as far as like in the creative field, AI tools and training, this is something that me and Chris talked about a couple times briefly. It's just there aren't really any like good resources for that. I think part of the problem is it just moves so quick, so it feels hard to like, make some real resources that are going to last more than 6 months. But yeah, there's definitely a need there.
Here's a good question from earlier. Do you guys think these models can understand their own limitations and the scope of their training data?
I actually have a paper talking about this. Like I compress the model and ask the model whether your compressed and make adjustment, and they can make some of the adjustment once they're compressed. I just told them like with like English, like you're compressed, be careful about your generation. And they're not successful all the time, but they're successful in some cases that they actually correct their generation based on the fact, like I told them you're compressed.
What if you ask a non-compressed model? What if you tell a non-compressed?
Yeah, we always do like some A/B testing. Like so, this is something like I'm interested in. Like I'm telling non-compressed model whether you're compressed. Like they should answer like no. In fact, that model can predict like 80% of accuracy whether they're compressed or not. So this is what we call like a self-awareness of computation in large language model. It's like so to me, like the first example is scary to me. Like I'm working in the night and I saw this result. It's like okay, but like later on, like do a more rigorous study and find more like advanced algorithm to handle this. But this is I think this is a promising direction. Like the model can have some capacity to understand like what is happening inside here.
And like what? Sorry, I got to dive into that a bit more. So, like, what kind of model are we talking? Like a foundational LLM, or
large language model. So basically, a large language model like where's like Long Beach. The correct answer should be LA. But like, if I compress the model, the model will say I'm a student looking for a job. Totally hallucination, right? Like he's making irrelevant statement. And I asked the prompt, like, please carefully examine the matrix computation in your model, and it may contain error. Please adjust your and now answer my question. Where is Long Beach? And they answered the correct way. Like it's in LA. Yeah.
That's super interesting.
That's wild. I could experiment with that. I think it's some fun things you could do with that by essentially just telling these things that they have limitations that they don't actually have. I gotta play with this.
Awesome. Well, look, guys, thank you all so much for joining us. I know this was definitely a really great conversation that I enjoyed taking a part of. I think I can speak for Chris, Max, and also for the audience that's been watching. I know a bunch of people are going to watch this, and I'm sure we'll see some great conversations pop up in YouTube comments as well. But yeah, no, really, thank you all for taking time out of your very busy days to come and talk with us about just where all this stuff is going and the current state of it. And it's also really eye-opening, I'm sure, for us, Max and Chris, on like in the little art bubble that we find ourselves kind of just like staring down the tunnel at every day, to hear about it in a more broader educational sense. And like just even the thought of like being back in high school again or in a college classroom and this stuff being a part of the curriculum is mind-blowing. Just thinking about what school was like back in the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
I'd love to connect after the stream is over as well, so we get more into depth about like what we can do to, back to my further point about what we can do to better support you guys. I think we have some ideas there. So hopefully we can connect offline after this, because yeah, it's been great, and we'd love to see what resources we can offer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely.
Awesome. Are there any personal social medias or things you guys are working on, or places where the audience can keep up with you guys that you would like to like to shout out, now would be the time to kind of plug yourselves and plug your work there.
Sure. I just finished a project called Honey Fungus, which uses a kind of earlier version of ChatGPT with an artist called Su Huang, amalgamated all the Smithsonian field research archives with a lot of amateur erotica to create this weird kind of plant romantic poetry. So I created a VR experience where you go through the ground and interact with a mycelium that accrues the world's kind of romantic memories, and you sort of enact the mushroom. So you can check that out on my website. That's jonahking.com.
I'll put that in the chat for everyone right now. That sounds wild.
Yeah, does it run on Quest? Because I'll boot that up like literally right after here.
It's PC VR right now, but I can totally send it over to you.
Oh yeah, great. Sounds amazing.
Brendan, Zhao, anything from you guys on the personal level?
If anyone's interested in sim to real and what you can train a robot to do in a simulation, there's some nice examples of it on my own research website. The lab is called the Robust Field Autonomy Lab. And if you search that combination of words, you're certain to find it. And we have a lot of our code available for free for others to use.
Yeah, for me, I'm doing a lot of research on like what we mentioned before, like how does language model understand their compressed here or not, like their internal state. And feel free to check my website. But like to me, I'm just an assistant professor at Stevens, so I haven't set up the good name yet. Maybe I will ask ChatGPT for that. But like, let's see.
Awesome. And Chris, want to give us a small, quick update on how your AIR project is going? If you got anything cool working on that you would like people to check out?
Sure. Yeah. I'll post more stuff onto the studio on Civitai soon, probably later today or tomorrow. I'm finally landing on some good workflows that using LCM that I think will be really helpful to get through how much I have to get through. It's like 2.5 hours of the film. So I have the first maybe 10 or so minutes done. And yeah, I'm going to have 2 assistants starting with me next week, focusing on image collection, LoRa training, and a lot of video editing and rotoscoping. And that's going to really speed up my end of the work. So it's been like a month and a half, and I think 90% of what I've generated has happened in the last 3 days or so. So I'm kind of ready to go now. Yeah, and there's some compromises there. I think that there'll be a little weirdness just because of how much I have to get through. But yeah.
Weirdness is good. Weirdness is good.
I was about to say we love a little bit of weirdness around here.
Okay, good. Yeah, little psychedelic.
Really weird because you're starting with like the very early stages of image styles,
yeah,
etc. So it was weird back then.
Totally. And I think there's something really interesting about that too, is I think as the film progresses, I'm going to get better at this. And I think maybe even, this is maybe a 4 or 5 months project. And along the way, if something updates and makes, a flux model super quick and I can kind of jump on that, it will kind of map to the progression of the image with the concept of the film too. So it makes sense to do it in this order.
Yeah, by the way, I'm looking for a lab logo. I'm currently looking for that. So like I may use the Civitai as my tools to see how it gets.
Let's touch base. Yeah, I would love to have that happen. It'd be great. Let's see what we can do there for you. Cool.
Awesome. Chris, anything from you?
Nope, I'm all good. We're just chugging away with our AIR program. We're just writing updates bi-weekly, and still you can access any of the artists' work that they're currently working on in the studio section. I think you posted a link, Tyler, in the chat. We've got those fig jam boards so you can track in real time what everybody's working on. So it's kind of cool there. And yeah, any other questions, you can always email air@civitai.com. Yep.
Awesome. Well, look, guys, once again, thank you for joining us. You are all legends in your own right. So thank you all very, very much. We really appreciate the time, and hopefully we get the opportunity to circle back with you all and do this again as things advance and continue the conversations. So again, a big thank you to everyone from Stevens Institute of Technology. This is Civitai.com. We'll be back on at 3 p.m. Pacific with a Civitai guest creator stream with some new audio reactive comfy nodes exclusively for you guys. So come back for that. Guys, thank you so much. Be sure to follow us at Hello Civitai on all the things. And did someone have one more thing? Did I hear someone? Nope. All right. Thank you, guys. We are out. We'll catch you later today. Everyone, thank you. All of you, stick around for just a second.